G'day, I'm Andrew Fenwick, and welcome to A Weed to Know.
Weed to know, cannabis info on a weed to know basis. Weed to know, interviews and news, cannabis info on a weed to know basis.
Hello, and welcome to A Weed to Know. So, as the theme song says, cannabis information on a weed to know basis. This is a new podcast, YouTube channel that we're putting together. I'm Andrew Fenwick, the presenter, and I'd just like to welcome you to this first episode, give you a bit of an idea of where we're going to take this whole experience. Basically, the idea is, over the last few years of being involved in advocacy for legalised cannabis in New South Wales, in Australia, I've met a lot of interesting people, and I've read a lot of research and seen a lot of people be very passionate about this whole movement towards legalisation. And I thought it'd be a good idea to meet them again, or meet them for the first time, and discuss their take on their particular interest in the legalised cannabis world. So this will be involving politicians, it'll be hemp industry people, it'll be medicine people, it'll be advocates that have been in the business for a long time, it'll be manufacturers of hemp products, pioneers in the hemp industry. All of these things are going to tie together to create a whole new industry here. And the legalisation of cannabis is coming. All the people that I know involved in this process know that will happen, but I suppose the main push is it should be happening now, it should be happening sooner. We need to get a framework and a platform together that works for everybody. So over the next, I've already got a list of about 20 people I want to speak to. So over at least 20 episodes, we'll discuss all these different interesting aspects. And I thought I'd lead into each of the episodes with a little bit of a talk about something current that's come up in the news just recently. Who am I and why am I doing this? Well, I'm an electrician, a herbalist, a train driver, operations project person, parent. I've had no income, I've had good incomes, I've had business, I've had financial crisis, damaged business. I've had a bit of a life, and our first guest today is one of the people who influenced my move into seeing this legalisation of cannabis to be such a big issue, and not just from to be honest, right now, I don't use any cannabis products because the job I have as a train driver doesn't allow me to have anything because it's a safety regulated space. So random drug tests, no trace, just like the driving laws in all of the states and many other countries is 0 THC or you're out of there. So I have, though. So my past does include some cannabis use. And I'd like to see it back. There's a lot of good reasons, and the last few years of being involved have given me the opportunity to explore in depth what's happening around the world, what's happening in Australia, and I've met so many people that have had such a positive experience from cannabis that even if it's not just about recreation, it is about the effect it has on people's lives in comparison to all their other alternatives. So we'll cover a lot, and I'm going to try and do this in a very light-hearted way. I don't think there's any way, if you're tuning into a YouTube channel, we're going to start streaming a podcast. I don't want it to be dreary. I don't want it to be boring. So we'll move along pretty quickly. We might start a conversation that will go into a totally different direction, and that's okay. These are people in the industry that I want to talk to, and we might get to know them about other issues, not just their feelings about cannabis. So the news for today, I think it's important that we have a bit of a look at what's happening in America. Not just as these people are pioneers, but we've got to look at America from the light of a lot of the problems we experience in Australia and around the world with the war on drugs and the stigmatisation of cannabis use and the whole structure of it has all been born in the USA and spread throughout the world so that everyone would comply to their moral judgment about whether people should or shouldn't use different substances. And now they've become the leader in the change away from those war on drug positions on cannabis. So just in the last 12 months, there's been quite a bit happening that should make us feel very positive about what's going to happen here. Because surely, if the political pressure and the lobbying from within doesn't start to affect our governments, the behaviour of our trading partners and our allies certainly should. And I think that's where we're going to go. So earlier this year, in May, we had the Food and Drug Administration in America, which is our equivalent to our TGA, petition the Drug Enforcement Agency to reschedule cannabis from a Schedule 1 narcotic down to a Schedule 3 controlled substance. And putting together all the evidence to say this, there's actually some good uses for cannabis, and also that we don't think we should be fighting it the way we are. The war on drugs, the damage that the war on drugs has done, all this came into this petition. So that's currently with the DEA now to decide whether they will reschedule or not. This doesn't make it a legal substance, but it makes it a controlled substance, which now means that you can start doing more research on it, and it will make it easier for some states to go, oh, well, it's not a narcotic now, so we'll change our stance. And also allows for federal taxes to be paid by organisations in each of the states that sell cannabis, because at the moment there's no tax deductibility for cannabis businesses in America. That's one issue. They also don't have a reliable banking access because federally it's still an illegal substance. So there will be some positive things come out of that for America. Around the same time that started, actually a year before, so in 2023, Minnesota signed in a new bill to legalise adult use cannabis. They've had medical cannabis for quite a while, and then they've signed in this legalisation process. This is important because Tim Walz could well be the next Vice President of America, and he's a very progressive governor at the present, and he signed this in. And I just wanted to read the statement that Tim Walz made while signing that document. So this is Tim Walz. We've known for too long that prohibiting the use of cannabis hasn't worked. By legalising adult use cannabis, we are expanding our economy, creating jobs, and regulating the industry to keep Minnesotans safe. Legalising adult use cannabis and expunging or resentencing cannabis convictions will strengthen communities, and that is the right move for Minnesota. Legalising adult use cannabis is about keeping our communities safe, advancing justice for Minnesotans, and investing in a strong economic future, said the Lieutenant Governor, Peggy Flanagan. Prohibiting the use of cannabis hasn't worked and has disproportionately harmed communities of colour across the state. By expunging non-violent cannabis convictions, we are removing the barriers that prevent thousands of citizens from fully returning to work, to their communities and to their lives. And this is how we make safer communities. That statement fits New South Wales and Australia. It also fits any other country in the world that is currently prohibiting cannabis use. This year, by the end of this year, we've got 4 more states in America are putting forward legalisation bills, and probably 3 of those will get over the board. We've just had the Harris presidential campaign also say that their intention is to legalise cannabis at a federal level in the states, and saying that as a candidate, Harris has always supported this move towards cannabis legalisation. So that's good. But the Trump campaign has also said that they support the legalisation of cannabis because at the moment Florida is one of those states that's coming up for a new bill and the governor there is against it, and now we've got Trump for it. So we'll see what happens there. But either way, whoever gets in the States for 2025 has already positioned themselves as somebody who will legalise cannabis. And interestingly, I've just come across another move from the senator from Colorado. He's now put together a bill or an act, a new act, with 16 other senators called the Cannabis Administration and Opportunities Act. And the premise of that act is to deschedule cannabis altogether. So not from 1 to 3, but off the schedule and start treating it like alcohol and tobacco. Having read through that bill, it's a hefty document, and it's hefty because not only does it talk about that, but it also talks about the expunging of charges, the setting up of a new industry, the setting up of the administration of that industry, and helping out the communities that have been worse hit by the war on drugs. So that it's a really comprehensive document. So if you're interested in this, I'd really suggest that you have a look for that. I'll try and remember to put something in the comments below the video about that. But yeah, it's the Colorado senator has put up this bill called the Cannabis Administration and Opportunities Act. Thoroughly recommend it. So all this is happening in America now. Some of that federal issue is a big one for us. We've got a federal election coming up soon. The states in Australia have a situation where they've got to create laws to go by our classification of cannabis. And at the moment, it's in our Schedule 9, which is where heroin and cocaine and all those other things live as a narcotic. This stops us from having it. When you look at that schedule, it actually says citizens aren't to have this. They're not to make it, they're not to distribute it, they can't have it. So when we get states coming up against the lawmaking that they've got to do, it involves, well, we've got this illegal substance that we're trying to legalise, which is why when we get prescription medical cannabis laws come into play, they're not really the same as another prescription, because you have to get a TGA exemption for each person that is getting a product prescribed to them. This also means that we're not getting all the research done in Australia that could be done on cannabis and its effects, both in the recreational adult choice world or in the medical world. We just don't get the research done because it's technically illegal to be giving test subjects, people, an illegal drug. So this will all change if we can change the federal level. So that's one of our big aims. We need to get that sorted. And of course, our hemp industry is under the thumb because it can't move ahead because cannabis is illegal. And because of that, all the constraints around the hemp industry are linked to the illegality of cannabis as a plant. So once this is released, all of a sudden Australia has a new industry, new jobs, new crops for farmers, new products to produce, new research and development, and all of a sudden we become a hemp economy that can do all sorts of wonderful things. And we can have adult choice cannabis for our use, whether we want it medically, recreationally, as food, it doesn't matter. And we've got to get to that point. Where we're at now is ridiculous. So that's enough for me. I hope that sort of triggers some conversations around it for you in terms of what you might want to do, and to do a bit more research into some of the other mechanisms that are in play here. It's not just what happens here, it's what's happening with Germany and Europe, because that's all connected. Once this, now that Germany is legalised, it legalised under an EU-approved framework. So, of course, that will mean that all of the European countries now have a model they can use. So we'll see how that unravels. So we're going to end up there. And I think we just need some brave politicians At the moment, surveys have said that 60% of the population think that legalised cannabis, the time has come. We need to start doing it. So any politician that thinks they're going to get an electoral backlash from this, I think they're missing the point. As we record this, the votes are being counted in the Queensland election in Australia, and the Legalise Cannabis Party is represented in, I think, 29 different seats up there. And having looked through the results, there's a pretty steady, 4 to 5% average, I reckon, across the state have voted for legalised cannabis. The highest one I've seen now so far is the president of the party up there scored around 8.5 so far. So this is very good. And it was good to see that the TV coverage actually started to talk about it as an issue, and as to whether the now leaving government, by the looks of it, there's been a change of government, would investigate cannabis legalisation more. But they haven't. So we'll have to see what the new, more conservative government does. But they do say they're a government for freedom and freedom of choice. So that sort of leans into the possibility we might have some more traction there. Our guest today has been chosen for two reasons. One, he's a friend of mine. I met Dr. Brian Walker in 2020, and by 2022 he was elected into the 21. He was elected into the Western Australian upper house as the first elected Legalise Cannabis Party candidate in the country. So that is a big thing. A single issue party, legalise cannabis in the name, gets enough votes to actually get in 2 representatives in the Western Australian Parliament. So that's very interesting. And the other thing is that he was the one who, because of his involvement with the politics of this, sort of triggered more of an interest in me. So with no further ado, I will move to the next stage, which is let's meet Dr. Brian Walker. And at the end of this, it'd be really good if you hit the like button on the video. And if you've got any questions that you'd like answered, or any topics that you'd like covered, or bits of news that you have that you'd like to share, please put them in the comments of the video. And if you're listening to this as a podcast, as an audio, just slip over to YouTube and find the video and make a comment in the bottom of that. So with no further ado, thanks for coming along, and I hope you stay with us and catch at least the next 20 episodes. And now we'll talk to Dr. Brian Walker.
On a weed to know basis.
So for the first episode of A Weed to Know, I'd like to introduce you all to my friend Dr. Brian Walker from WA.
How are you?
Good, mate. Good to see you again.
It's been a long time, hasn't it?
It has.
We first met, I think, in the US, yeah, didn't we?
No, we missed each other in the US.
Okay, I'll be connected online as a result of that.
Yeah, we got into a project group to help each other achieve our little projects that we were doing.
Indeed, so yes. How are you doing your project?
Well, it's all changed too, hasn't it? Just like yours. So,
yeah, indeed.
I had a few different reasons, but we'll get back to yours first, because you're creating a platform for helping people and teaching a holistic view of life. And
we've both got a passion for wellness, haven't we?
We have.
In our ways.
Yes.
And I love what you're doing with nutrition. It's so essential to wellness. I've been looking at alternative health since a long time now. Back in Germany, I began that process. And what I'm concerned about is that the feeling for wellness in the health profession is actually almost absent. If we look at the disease, we want to treat the disease, we don't want to get the fundamentals of wellness under control. So the causes of disease are just ignored. And the biggest cause, I think, is gut health and food processing industry and the environmental pollution, just making people sick. That's quite apart from the mental health disorders we've got with psychosocial environment, which is deeply unhealthy. And so, of course, our wellness is not improving. We may live longer, but we're living with more disease and we're living less well, I think. That's my passion.
It's not a great end. The way society is going, it's not a great end. And we've always believed that your body's only normal response to stress, and the environment is good nutrition, and at the same time that the stress levels are going up, the nutrition's going down, and that also contributes to a bad spiral, unfortunately.
I'm sure you'd agree with me that the writings of Joe Dispenza are fascinating. And people like Joe, who are looking here at a very different reality, that this three-dimensional reality we've currently got really doesn't reflect our true reality, which is more energetic, fourth, maybe even fifth dimension, if that exists.
Yeah, and I think we'd be foolish not to acknowledge the energetic nature of humans and their connection to everything around them. But we do. So, to our peril.
Well, indeed. Well, what I say to my patients is, look, if I hit my three-dimensional head against a three-dimensional table, it's still going to hurt. So you've got to deal with the three-dimensional facts of now.
That's it. So, on your journey, we've gone from being an international influencer in well-being and wholeness, and we've tripped into politics from a prescribing cannabis doctor into an educating cannabis politician. It's been an interesting journey.
Yes. It's been a journey, hasn't it? And we've spoken about this when we went to visit each other at Nimbin, and that was fantastic, just to get together with like-minded people on that journey. But I started out in politics with anger because I found a government which was deeply unconcerned about wellness and actually making it hard for people to achieve wellness. So I jumped into politics saying I need to fix things, and here I am after almost 4 years now heading for re-election, already having made a difference. At least in the chamber here. I'm actually sitting in Parliament right now. I've stepped out of the chamber and there's ongoing debate at the moment to talk with a friend about things that really matter. Because what happens in that chamber there, I think, doesn't really matter. We're making laws, I think, which are restricting people more and more. And I don't think we're actually doing a good thing. For example, we were talking about laws today about, this was industrial relations. And really, one of the aspects there was about sexual harassment and how do we deal with that. Look, we've dealt with that in different legislation over different times. How is it we've got to legislate to people to be kind to each other?
Yeah, again. Yes. We're missing something, aren't we, really?
Missing something, yes.
Yeah. The humanity of it all. Yeah. And
So it is.
There's so much, like you've already said, you've made an influence in the people in the chamber. So you're making an impact there, but when it comes to the theatre of the chamber, it hasn't really amounted to much, has it?
Well, I was interviewed today by a very eminent journalist, Joe Spagnolo, for the Sunday Times coming out this Sunday. He's doing a feature on politicians in the run-up to the election.
Nice.
And I was speaking with them, and I said, well, actually, most of the people in the chamber, they're hearing about cannabis every day. And I'm not using cannabis as the be-all and end-all. It's as a useful, healthy, healing herb, but it stands as a symbol for all the ways that we've been lied to in so many different areas. It's everything about cannabis is actually fraudulent, what the government has been telling us. And then the question is asked, well, where else are you giving fraudulent information? Are you not being quite truthful? And truth in politics actually doesn't really matter. It's the perception of truth which matters to politicians. And that, I think, is deeply, deeply unhealthy. And so what I've been speaking about here in the chamber on a regular basis has been about cannabis in all its forms, physical, mental, social, financial, as well as social justice. And people here actually agree with me, but they don't dare say so, because if people think they're soft in cannabis, they'll lose votes. Wow.
And is that what they've said to you about the softness, that if people think they're softening their thing on drugs, that they're suddenly losing touch with the...
Well, getting people to speak openly is difficult. Now, most of the people in the chamber agree with my point of view that cannabis is a healthy healing herb, which can be misused, but they won't dare say so. A lot of them, more than half, have tried cannabis. There are members of the parliament on all sides who use cannabis occasionally or regularly, I don't know, but don't dare say so. It's like cocaine, for example. Our business district here runs on cocaine. Are you going to get business people saying so? Nope.
No, not at all. And I was thinking about if we do get enough facts and change outside of our parliaments, do you think that ideology will change around this stuff? Are you confident that...
Oh, inevitably it must.
Yeah, but is
It must.
it going to be because the facts overpower the stigmatise, or are they just going to give in because there's too much money in it to be lost or saved, or I don't know, what's the...
There's a couple of aspects there. I mean, bear in mind that it wasn't so long ago, it's in my living memory, that if you were gay, at least in WA, you were faced with a potential maximum 21 years in prison.
Yeah, another
So it's
morality law.
unthinkable now.
Yeah, and that's this essentially this is
Cannabis.
the last of the morality laws, isn't it? When you think about it.
Oh, well, look at Queensland wants to reintroduce criminalising abortion.
Yeah,
Really? And it might come to pass if enough politicians get elected.
yeah.
What does it say? Look at America, for example, when they're actually putting women's lives at risk. They can't, if they've got, say, a pregnancy, an ectopic pregnancy, which is life-threatening for the woman.
Still
And in
counted.
America, they've passed laws saying you will not operate that cause of the problem, which is actually the implantation of an unborn of a fetus, or actually just a few embryonic cells in the wrong place. You will not remove that because that's actually you're taking a human life. And the mother, and there's cases right now where the mothers have suffered and died or had lifelong problems as a result of that. And who thinks these things up? And who gets them to be passed as lawgivers? But bearing in mind laws, I was saying today in the chamber, we've got laws there. Do we have justice? The answer is no, we don't. I've just asked a question today about a law as a judge, and I'll be speaking more about that in the chamber. I must do it in the chamber because otherwise, you see, I can get done for actually
defamation and stuff.
Well, no. Speaking about someone, but I haven't brought the actual proof, although I do have the proofs, of someone who is not fit for service. Now, I will be taking that a step further and opening myself to an attack because I will be going very close to behaving illegally at naming someone who's unfit for purpose, or two people actually. And it takes courage to do that. Now, how many people actually are going to put their lives at risk? And it's possibly the case. I mean, if I make myself really unpopular, there may be an accident, who knows? But look, someone somewhere's got to stand up for justice,
Yeah.
but do what's right. And that's I think it's a social and moral courage, which I think is all too lacking in our public sphere.
Well, and it's lacking that service to people, which is what it's all supposed to be about. It's a sad thing that in 2024 we're still having politicians arguing whether, women should have the right to have an abortion, or whether people should be policed about everything they do with their body and their life. We seem to be going away from that holistic view of humanity and their ability to learn.
Look, we can get politically incorrect as well. Look at the current horror in Palestine and Israel, and look at what's going on there. And when you understand the history, and when you understand what's actually happened, you can realise that there are no winners there. There is no right, there is no wrong. There's wrong on a lot of sides. And to take a side and say, this, I'm going to support this side, and against that side there, is actually wrong. Now, the Israelis themselves, you see, the majority of them are standing up, we do not want this. But they've been controlled by a government which says, no, we're doing this. And you can see this happening over decades. We want more power, we want more control.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you see the Palestinians, who at the time when it was Begin and Arafat at Camp David, they came to an agreement and they just said, no, we're not going to do this. One side, no, we want more. And the people who suffer are not the politicians. Until recently, of course.
Yeah, it's starting to happen now, but you can see that this is a government in power when there's a war on stays in power. You can sort of see that as another reason to drag this thing out. And I was only saying to someone today that if any other country, if this was North Korea or Russia, well, Russia's sort of doing it in the Ukraine, was behaving like this, we'd consider them a rogue state. And that's not happening now.
Indeed.
We keep just saying, they've got the right to defend themselves, but this has gone past any sort of regular level of retribution.
But has it? If you can imagine that the people are actually building their bases under hospitals, and are they surprised when they get attacked and destroyed?
Oh, no.
Because people have,
and they clearly,
is that right?
They've clearly put them there as a human shield potential anyway. So
Well,
the whole
indeed.
thing's way too messy.
The whole thing is
Yeah,
totally screwed,
it
isn't
is.
it?
And the fact that
But how
we're
much
still dabbling in it.
But the US, for example, is another case in point. You've got the misinformation, disinformation of things happening in the US, which is motivating people to make decisions about choosing a president. And you could say, well, neither are a good choice. So why would a country as large and as great as the USA choose two such people? And then you look at Gore Vidal said, you think there's two parties in the US. There's not. There's one. It's a party of property. And that party represents 4% of the people, said Gore Vidal. And I think I quite agree with that.
Yeah.
Everyone else doesn't matter. And the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer. And I'll tell you what, I wouldn't have said this a few years ago, but as a politician now, I've actually been reading economics and politics. It's strange. But there's a horror story. It's a book. It's actually about economics and politics. It's a horror story. And I recommend you have a look at that. It's called The Invisible Doctrine.
Okay.
And it tells a story. It's a thin tome. It tells a story about the neoliberal politics which arose in the 1930s. We hear about Keynes and Friedman as the two sides of the economic argument. And you look at what's actually happening, and then you realize this is actually describing in great detail why the world is in such a screwed place.
Yeah.
And it's actually given me nightmares because the bottom line is that the people accept what's happening now as being normal. This is the way things are. And that is so wrong.
And you know,
so wrong.
From our experience in the States, we've both accumulated a collection of American friends and not so much friends anymore, and they are so caught up in that. The belief of what's
a lovely
normal
example.
Right.
Well, definitions of what's the word. For example, I was describing to a doctor, actually, a colleague of mine in the US. He said, you're a communist. I said, well, your medical system is communist. I've lived in Russia. I said, you've got the wrong idea. And I described a patient who had cholecystitis, inflammation of the gallbladder, which needed to be removed. Otherwise, he would have had septicemia and died. So he went to hospital, had this gallbladder taken out, and the whole thing with the Medicare in Australia cost him a big total, with the fees included $600. So I asked him, so in the US, how much does it cost you? And the actual fact is, it would have bankrupted the average citizen.
Yeah.
They couldn't do it.
Yeah, sell the house.
In fact, the same group that I was a member of when I went to that course, one of the guys who was very much on that line, it's all communism, socialism, we don't want that here, we're the best country in the world. 2 years later, I think he died of an eminently treatable infection, but he didn't have the funds to pay for it, and he's now under the ground. But a proud American. And I think, man, that is so... You've bought in to a system, you believe the system, and it's nothing like correct.
No.
We might probably guilty of the same thing here as well, because we've got this view here that we're right. How do we know that? We buy into this. And this maybe explains why we allow ourselves to incarcerate so many young people, especially the indigenous people, that we just lock them up because they've done crime. Is this the right way to behave? So we have to examine ourselves and look at this in some detail. And that's where that book came in, because it did make me think very hard about, if we truly have been hoodwinked by that political philosophy, we must do something about it. And it's something as basic as maybe going back. Let's look at this urbanization we've got. Maybe it's not the best thing. Maybe you want small villages, raise people in villages. Maybe you want to focus on the agriculture and make sure that the land is cared for. Maybe you want to have education, which teaches us real things, not the stuff we don't need to know. We can always do that at university or other places. Yeah. Maybe you want to look at wellness as not a collection of the diseases we haven't got, but a lifestyle which encourages wellness. Rethinking our entire social structure. That might be a good idea, but of course, it's not something we're not going to do that right now.
There's probably not.
We ought to start thinking differently.
There's probably not enough money in it, Brian. I'd say that.
Oh, you cynic! You agree entirely.
But it could be something in that. And talking about the States and how they're going with these podcasts, the idea is to do a little bit of what's current, and then interview a guest who's influential in this sphere. And you're the first politician in Australia elected under the single issue Legalise Cannabis Party banner. This is no mean feat, and it was a great message to the community of politicians all around the country, not just the ones in WA. But there's been some interesting developments. I mean, I think the last, since May, we've had a lot happen in the States that has to have an influence on what's going on here. And the ones I've sort of covered in the headlines, we start off with the FDA petitioning the DEA to deschedule cannabis. This isn't a horrible, dangerous thing. We've decided as a Food and Drug Administration that we shouldn't be administering this like a criminal narcotic. We need to bring it back down. That's created a bit of kerfuffle and a bit of language within their politics about whether this should happen or shouldn't happen. I don't know.
That's interesting.
If you've seen the Colorado Senator Hickenlooper and 16 of his colleagues have put a bill forward called the Cannabis Administration Opportunity Act. And they're coming to the federal government saying, we actually want to deschedule cannabis completely and just regulate it like alcohol and tobacco. The bill is full of conversations about the failed war on drugs and the people it's impacted and the loss of economy and the loss of freedom and all the things that go with it. So it's a combination of legalisation through total descheduling and expunging of non-violent cannabis crimes, sentencing of other cannabis-related crimes to lesser things, bringing people out of jail, bringing them out of the felon list so they can now vote and travel and work again like they haven't been able to. So it's got lots of lovely language. And now we've got this political race that's happening with Tim Walz and Kamala Harris coming in. As of August last year, Minnesota legalised cannabis under Walz's signature. And it's also a very generous expunging of charges and decriminalising and a whole raft of things. So now he's potentially heading to the Oval Office now. And then last week, Kamala Harris says, she's going to make it her intention that at a federal level, cannabis will be legal. So surely, if this all comes to pass, that has to have a stone in the middle of the pond effect for all of us.
Well, the thing which really interests me is how could we let it happen that ignorant people told a lie and got the world to follow? You mentioned cannabis as a narcotic. Now, from a pharmacological perspective, there's not a single aspect of cannabis anywhere, in any of the cannabinoids, which works as a narcotic. Not a one. But still, we have international laws which declare it a narcotic, and national and state laws follow on, predicated upon a lie being enshrined into law. And we as a world accept it. In Singapore, they're executing people for it. Wow.
And this is the thing. On one hand, we've got governments legalising, and then we've got other governments that are tightening up. Like the UK came hard down. It's just bizarre. We're in a really fluxy moment.
Look at alcohol. Take alcohol into Saudi Arabia, you're not going to be a happy bunny. So they've banned alcohol because it's dangerous. Well, actually, they're quite right. Alcohol is dangerous. But why kill people because of alcohol? It's a choice, individual choice. They're banning it because of religion, of course, because Muhammad said it was alcohol banned. Do you know why Muhammad said that?
Well, it's about the loss of cognizance, or
no? It wasn't originally banned, but when people turned up blind drunk at prayer time, he said, "Not good enough. We'll ban alcohol." That was it.
Comply or lose your rum. Oh, we've heard that before too. Yes.
Oh dear. So we've got this legal system here which is completely wrong. We've got this war on drugs which has done nothing but cause harm. There is actually nothing good about that war on drugs. No one benefited anywhere. It cost money. We lost citizens. We lost freedoms. I can't think of anything good to say about the war on drugs. In fact, the prohibition of anything always fails. We're trying it again just now to straight with vapes. Well, why are you banning vapes?
Control it. Regulate the quality and the distribution. be better.
Well, the stuff that we had was 3 chemicals, so it was quite safe. The government has now has put out information so that people are now coming to me saying, if I'm going to take some cannabis as a dried herb, I'm going to smoke it because vaping is dangerous. And that's so wrong. So wrong. But they've been told this by government and they believe it. So we have a problem here with veracity and science. And again, you shouldn't blindly follow science. You should always question science, although up to a point. I mean, questioning science about is the world flat or not, that's maybe going too far.
Who'd have thought that'd come back? I mean, honestly. And
there's people can dispute. We need more science, but this is what government does. We need more research. We need more research. That's a good way of saying, we're going to look after this, but we need more research. So not yet. This is the classical way of actually not doing anything.
Well, we've seen it. I mean, you look at from a legalised cannabis point of view, and even road safety, all that sort of stuff. We've got 15 years of international data we can lean on. And now we're doing
what about domestic violence?
Driving trials in Victoria. Yeah, same thing.
Yeah. But domestic violence, I mean, no, it's not a problem. It's a marriage. Of course, you shouldn't protest. You're married, and therefore the husband can rape you whenever he wants, and beat you up and smack the children because it's this is the way you scare the rod to spoil the child type of stuff. This is all correct. Really. And again, it's legislating. Be kind to people. This is
teach boys how to be kind.
It's frustrating.
Teach people to be kind.
Respect other people. It's basic humanity, if you like, but we've lost sight of that. And the more laws we make, the more we lose sight of the fact that we need to be kind to each other and show more love. If there's one word I would give out to the population, we need to show more love.
Yeah.
Buy a pet. Practice showing love with your pet. Stroke your pet. Let your pet give you a lick. And do that with other people as well. Don't lick people in the street. But let's just be kind to people.
Let's not do that, Brian.
Give a smile. Shake a hand. Give them a hug if you like. A friend you got there. Let's be friendly. There's a case just the other day there, actually yesterday in WA, as a mother holding a 2-year-old child, and a woman runs across, smacks the child, and runs off again.
What? Where's that? What's? Yeah, and when you look at this, like that broad view of law, if you teach people the broad expectation of society and how to behave and how to be, rather than, you see it in workplaces where the organisations get so prescriptive about how people have to be that nobody actually has any innate ability to figure things out for themselves anymore. They only follow the procedure.
Always someone to blame.
Yeah.
This is here,
the paper trail.
Linguistic programming is always, if I can always find someone to blame, to make an excuse why I'm in this situation. You're to blame and you did this and that's why I'm like this.
Yeah.
But ideally, it comes down to yourself. What am I doing about this? If I'm going to be angry, I choose to be angry. You have made me angry. Well, that's wrong.
Yeah.
I am responding with anger to what you are doing.
So
my response is my choice.
Why are our governments responding to this issue that we're so passionate about with such closed minds and disdain? And what do you think is going to happen? You're in the...
Well, ultimately, I was told by a minister in passing, cannabis will be legalised in 5 years. Okay. It's happening. Look, it's like growing grapes in your backyard. You can make wine out of grapes and get drunk on it if you want, but we can still grow grapes in the backyard. Cannabis you can't grow. Why? Well, you might get high in that. And what's the problem with that?
Yeah.
We could use that. Cannabis used in cooking, for example. If you're making cannabis butter and you're making food, there's a lot of recipes for cannabis which are very helpful. The endocannabinoid system, using 4 cannabis leaves mixed in a green smoothie, would actually be very helpful in stopping or treating COVID. Let's do that rather than actually taking a vaccine which might cause problems, and it probably does. Well, why not use nature? Well, let's be well.
Give it a shot.
I mean, it's so brain dead simple to me. But if you've got concerns and fears and worries because you're not educated and you refuse to allow yourself to be educated, then we have a problem. For example, doctors right now, the endocannabinoid system, discovered in 1996 by Raphael Mechoulam in Israel, and still is not taught in medical schools today. Still is not taught. So doctors have got no clue about the endocannabinoid system. They'll give you heroin derivatives quite happily because we know how that works. Okay, but cannabis, dangerous, it's addictive. It's not. It's going to cause psychosis. It won't. What causes more psychosis? Tobacco and alcohol. So cannabis is safer than tobacco or alcohol for causing psychosis. Should we give cannabis to growing young brains? No, we should not.
But we shouldn't give them alcohol or
don't give alcohol to growing brains. Same for cannabis.
Yeah, and yet,
let's be sensible about this.
How many houses would have a beer full of fridge and a liquor cabinet and a wine cellar?
Indeed, but how many houses are actually made of hemp?
Well, we'll get to that. That's another one.
Because if we're frightened of THC, therefore we're not going to grow the hemp, therefore we're not going to any producing for the hemp, therefore the whole business fails. We have right now, the ADF is building bomb and bulletproof covers for their motors made of hemp and carbon fibre.
Yeah.
Bomb and bulletproof. We could send this into space.
Yeah, and we will get there, and I think it's just about getting the laws changed so that hemp just becomes a crop that we can research and develop and create new things with. At the moment, if you've got to have a plant that you can't even show on the side of a road, that really limits the amount of arable land that you can use.
Very much so.
It's a terrible situation.
But I'm actually hoping for, you mentioned laws. I think we should have less laws. I think we should have more freedom to do what we want to do, when and how we want, as long as no one else is getting hurt. Just be free. And that just is be a mensch. That's a good way of saying that in the Yiddish way. Be a mensch.
Yeah, mensch.
Be kind, be nice. Yeah, be a mensch.
Well,
the less government, the less laws we have there, and the more we are relying on ourselves to treat others as we would like ourselves to be treated, be respectful, and just be a mensch. For example, the laws we were talking today about how do you manage industrial relations. And you do this, you do that, and under these conditions you do that. The bottom line ought to be, don't take what belongs to someone else. As an employer, don't rip off your employee. As an employee, don't rip off your employer.
It seems too easy. You know, Brian, we've taken up too much of your time. You're actually still at work, and I shouldn't be really dragging you away from that. WA is suffering for this. Thank you so much, mate. And we will catch up very shortly and follow up.
It's a real pleasure. Love you, brother.
Yeah, you too, mate. Can't wait to see you. Bye. And once again, thanks for joining us on A Weed to Know. Presented by Andrew Fenwick, that's me. Music by Daniel Arvidsson, the famous Newcastle musician. And if you like what you hear, please share and subscribe. And of course, this is our first one. All three of you are probably going to at least enjoy it a little bit. But if you do like it, share it around. If you have any comments, put them in the comments box. If you have any questions or any information that you'd like to share, please get in touch. And once again, thanks for joining us.